Are you looking for an experience that will grow your teenagers' faith, increase their leadership skills, and teach them the discernment to engage with the world all around them, all while taking them on the adventure of a lifetime? I mean, who isn't looking for that? If your teenager loves fun, adventure, and wants to grow in their faith and leadership this summer, then send them to Excel's Summer Leadership Camp. Excel's Summer Leadership Camp is a 12-day experience for passionate young leaders looking to discover God's truth, to discern wisely, and live wholeheartedly. Your teenager will embark on a transformative journey in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where they'll build lasting friendships in the context of community, embark on thrilling adventures like camping, rock climbing, whitewater rafting, and they will receive expert training and certifications in categories like CPR and wilderness first aid. Each aspect of the camp is woven together to help them learn to discover truth, to discern wisely, and take godly action in the context of real-life situations. To learn more or begin an application, go to theexcelcamp.org. That's theexcelcamp.org. Hurry, because summer is just around the corner.
Hey, I'm Greer. Welcome to the Unfinished Idea podcast, a space for you to expand your understanding about the neurodiverse world, which is all around us. Whether you're a parent, a friend, a teacher, or a neighbor, everyone is welcome to join us as we help bring awareness and better understanding about those who are neurodivergent and families who are raising children with special needs. I'm a mom to 2 boys and 2 dogs, and together with my husband, raising a child with additional needs. I often feel lonely and overwhelmed in my daily experience because life looks different for us. This podcast will share practical help, tips, and insights into the difficulties, joys, and differences of the neurodiverse world. So let's start the conversation. This week, I'm talking with Carrie from All Kids Swim about the importance of water safety for all children, especially neurodivergent kids. She is passionate to let parents know some practical steps that we can all take in our own bathtubs to help kids learn what to do if they find themselves in water. We also dive into some of the hard realities like drowning and other mistakes that can happen. But most importantly, we talk about ways that we can keep all kids safe. Even if you don't have kids, you don't want to miss this conversation. So let's grab your drink and let's jump in. Why is it important for neurodiverse people, children, to know how to swim and kind of the safety around water?
Well, I think it's important for all kids to know how to swim. There's water everywhere, lakes, streams, rivers, ponds, oceans. So I think that's a life skill. In speaking about neurodivergent kids and specifically, kids on the spectrum, it is the number one cause of death in children with autism, ages 14 and younger. And I think that is because of the elopement factor. They tend to wander and are very drawn to water. But like I said, I think that it's a life skill that every child should learn how to do.
Yeah. And how could it be slightly maybe a different experience for neurodivergent kids?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So that's particularly what I specialize in is neurodivergent kids and, obviously kids on the spectrum. So people in general are visual learners, right? And I think that kids especially are more visual than adults because they see something and that's just what their brain sees. So what I try to do with my swim lessons is when I'm teaching, I give them, they hear it, so they're auditory. They see it because I have like a visual schedule of what we're going to do and that sort of thing. And then we actually do it. So they're getting 3 modalities of the skill. And I have noticed that tends to be a lot more successful than just speaking to them or speaking at them because they're getting those 3 different types of teaching techniques.
So having those 3 kind of techniques obviously kind of uses different parts of their brains and different kind of sensory elements to it. But how could a parent be involved in that as well?
I was telling you a little bit earlier that a lot of parents may not have the means to find swim lessons or the financials to pay for that. So I always encourage parents that you absolutely 100% can teach your own kid how to swim. At the end of the day, your kid better than anybody else, right? So I think what it is finding those particular skills to teach. Number one, to survive a potential drowning incident, right? And then, moving towards like for fun and pleasure, swimming for fun, right? So taking care of the safety aspect as a parent, teaching those skills, and then moving toward the fun part of swimming, right? Because swimming should absolutely be fun for everybody.
Yeah, I have a lot of memories. My dad's parents had a pool, and I remember that was where we would go.
Yeah, summer.
And yeah, my grandma taught me how to swim. And then we did do some kind of professional lessons, but for the core stuff, she taught me how to swim. And yeah, the idea that parents know their kids better is a great reminder, especially when it comes to swimming, because you know what they're going to be able to do and not do, or how slowly they need to go. I remember my brother who isn't neurodivergent, but just had a fear of water. I think it took him all summer to learn to swim, but it was just even getting him into the water. So the idea of just, your child, how to get them to the first step, and then to the second step, and then waist deep, or, kind of that idea.
And, it doesn't matter neurodivergent or neurotypical. Every kid is different. I think the main thing is the safety aspect, go there first and then work on the fun stuff, the jumping in, the cannonballs, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. What would you suggest to a parent, or even, to a swim instructor, to be kind of that first step to help a child feel comfortable in the water?
Right. So I think you first need to ask yourself as a parent, I always ask this with new students, first of all, is your child neurodivergent? Is your child on the spectrum? And then my next question is, does your child elope or wander? And if they say yes, that's the very, 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 very first thing that we address. And so what I teach, and what you can teach as a parent, is as soon as your kid hits water, whether it's a river, a lake, a pond, the ocean, a swimming pool next door, you need to teach them to be able to touch water, and you roll over on your back and you airplane. We call it airplane with your wings like this. And so that is a skill that is going to take some time to teach. But if you are repetitive and you teach it over and over and over, the thought is that if they are unfortunately in a situation where they are in water and they cannot swim, that they remember that memory of, ooh, I'm in water, let me roll over an airplane, right? So that is the very first thing that I would encourage parents to teach their child, is the rollover and float. And that's going to take a little bit. A lot of kids don't like to be on their backs and float. And I get that. It's kind of like if you think about dogs, they don't like to be on their back either. It's like a submissive, but that absolutely is the way to survive, because if you're in an open body of water, there is no wall, right? There's no ledge, there's no ladder, there's no stairs. So the only way you can survive is floating. And then obviously when you get on your back, calling for help.
That's a good point about, getting on your back will help you float, but then it also gives you that opportunity to call for help, or
it gives you time.
Yeah. Versus, when you're face down, you're not able to do that.
Or, I have some kids that are not verbal, but yet they make a lot of sounds, right? So I tell them, I'm like, make all the sound you want. Do it. And we practice. We do a lot of role play and practicing that, so that it becomes ingrained in their head of like, okay.
Yeah, you're just giving me lots of ideas for my son. And like the idea of practicing, like we do a lot of flying, and we talk about when you're at an airport, if you get separated, and we practice that. We practice going to find someone who has a certain, look about them, and we practice different things. And so that's a really good idea. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about, even in water, practicing making noise, calling for help.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that they're turned on their back. That's a really good, really good thing to practice. And that could even be in the tub. The turning over may not be quite in the tub, but that practicing of making noise, calling for help could be in the tub as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can certainly learn to float in the bathtub depending on how big your bathtub is and how big the kid is, right? You absolutely can teach them how to float in the bathtub. It's confined, it's more safe. At least that's what a lot of students tell me, is that they kind of feel safe with that round kind of all the walls, and they know that nothing major is going to happen, right? So even if you don't have a pool, I strongly suggest teaching them how to float in the bathtub. Or there's community pools. You could ask a neighbor if they have a pool. I mean, there's definitely ways that you can make this happen.
Yeah. If a parent was looking for a swim coach or a swim guide, no, that's not the right word.
I gotcha. No, I gotcha.
What would be something that they could ask them to make sure that they are equipped?
The first thing I would do is Google adaptive swim lessons and see if there's any in your area. So adaptive means that they have a neurodivergent teaching background. They teach many kids like that, right? And if you are unsuccessful with that, I would suggest going on to some different moms groups, Facebook, Instagram, and inquire about a swim instructor that maybe they have used for their neurodivergent child or whatever, right? But when you are calling swim schools, let's call it Susie Q's swim school, right? You need to make sure that you talk to the manager or whoever is in charge, because a lot of times you'll call and it'll be like a 16-year-old who really doesn't know what they're talking about, and ask those kinds of questions. First of all, do you have any instructors that have taught neurodivergent kids? And if they say no, then you move on. But if they say yes, you then inquire a little bit more. How many years have they been doing it? How many students have they taught? And then maybe think about the experience that swim instructor has. Because a lot of those swim schools you'll find are, teenagers or college students. And let's be honest, they're just there for the paycheck. They're not really invested in your child per se learning or gathering those essential safety skills.
Yeah.
And you might find it to be more expensive, but in the long run, you're going to want to have that experience instead of just burning your money.
Yeah, we put our son in some swim lessons, actually both in the US and in the UK. And in the US, it was in the summer. Again, like you said, it was high school, college kids being lifeguards at the community pool. It's a job. I can see them loving it. But at the same time, it was really interesting seeing him in a group there was 10 kids. And I knew a couple others were neurodivergent. And the first day there was one swim instructor. And I thought, nope, this is not going to work. By the end of the week, there was, I think, 5 of them. Every day there was like another one added, which was great in one sense because they got a little bit more one-to-one because they just knew they needed that. But I just thought, yeah, now being a parent of it, and realizing, I was like, this isn't going to work. She's not going to be able to control them. And they were all, to be honest, I thought even if they were all neurotypical, they were all 4-year-olds. So that's not working.
And I want to say this to your people that are your listeners, please do not do group swim lessons. It's a waste of money because what happens is the instructor is always going to gear their lesson toward the lowest, I hate to say the word performing, but the lowest skill set child. So if you have a child in there who doesn't even get their face wet, and then you have Johnny who can get to the wall and do all the instructor is going to accommodate to the lower level swimmer. And so then you miss out and you're not accommodating or differentiating to every single kid. So if you're doing individual lessons, you are constantly, like I said, differentiating and adapting your lesson to that kid. And then what happens is they end up learning so much faster because you don't have all that time of wasting.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Yeah, his was very introductory. We just wanted him to get in the water. So it was good. But at the same time, we now in the UK, he does it with a friend because we found is that kind of, body doubling. But yeah, we definitely were like, we aren't going to do that again just because it was hard for us. It was hard for him afterwards. It was just the whole thing. I just thought, yeah, we'll just stick to doing it.
Right. And that is a good point that you just brought up, Greer, is that, a lot of neurodivergent kids kind of need a little buddy, if you will, to kind of go through the process that they're going through. And so I say too is okay as long as they're kind of on the same kind of skill set. But a lot of times having a buddy or a friend only adds to the comfort level. They're not there by themselves with this person they don't know in water, which they're not comfortable with. It kind of makes it a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, he started on his own and he's very social. So we find if he has to do something on his own, it's actually not punishment, but he finds it draining. He actually finds that really hard to do things on his own. So if he has a buddy who's next to him, body doubling, or just even in the same room, he does homework when I'm doing dinner, so we're in the same room.
Yeah, my daughter, who's 5.5, is neurodivergent, and when I was teaching her, I went ahead and taught my son as well, just so that she could have that comfort level of her sibling. Even though I was her mom, it was more of like, okay, well, he's doing it too. So she was more open to trying new things if he was doing it. And he's neurotypical.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. And that, it gives, I don't know, encourages me knowing even your daughter needed a buddy sometimes because it's a whole new experience, a whole new thing. How can a swim instructor or a parent, if they're in a pool, so I know a lot of pools in the UK are indoor and it can get kind of echoey, is that kind of indoor echoey. I find it sometimes a little overwhelming, let's be honest. Is there anything you could think of that might help a child kind of in that situation, in that environment?
Earplugs, just to not mute the sound completely, but to bring it down, and if you're right there, they'll be able to hear you, but yet the background environmental noise will be so much quieter. And you can even get like the wax that just goes in your ear and just don't push it in there so hard to where they can just hear you when you're close. But it will mute or at least muffle a lot of the background because they are loud. Indoor pools are so echoey, you're right. and water temperature, Greer, is another thing. Don't work with your child in 80 degrees. The ideal temperature that I keep my pool at is between 88 and 92 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that would be in Celsius, but that is the ideal temperature. And this is especially true for infants because infants are very prone to hypothermia, if you can believe that.
Yeah, I remember reading something about that and being actually really surprised about, because it was talking about bath water and it being actually hotter than you think it needs to be.
It's the same thing like when adults go in a hot tub, it's relaxing, it's comforting, it's stress. It's the same kind of concept. Same thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. When would you suggest a child neurotypical or neurodivergent, start learning how to swim?
So there's a difference between learning how to swim and what I call water acclimation. Not sure if you're familiar with that. So for instance, both of my children, when I was cleared by my OB at 6 weeks, I started water acclimation with them. So the whole sensory of What does it feel like on my shoulders, on my hair, on my face, a trickle versus a little bit more, just kind of experimenting with just the actual feeling of water, especially on the face, because that's one of the biggest barriers or hurdles that I find is a lot of kids don't want to get their face wet. And so if you start that right out of the gate, the water acclimation, it has been said, or a lot of statistics show that they will end up learning to swim much faster because of that acclimation that they had early on.
Could that acclimation be in the tub or,
maybe. Yes. And you can get like little squirt toys or little watering cans. That's what I always use with my own kids or kids that I'm teaching. Even like a plastic cup. You can use whatever you have in the bathtub just to acclimate your child to water.
What about if a child has a fear of water? How would you go about that? How would you help that child?
That is probably 80% of kids that I teach is their biggest hurdle. So I always tell parents, just because your child is not an infant doesn't mean that they can't do water acclimation at home in the bathtub. So you do those same kinds of things with your 4-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever, in the bathtub. And you will find a lot of neurodivergent kids take a little bit longer to come around to acclimating to the water. And of course, there's always toys and different tricks, if you will, to pull out of your hat to make it work, Do you know what a puddle jumper is or like arm floaties?
I think I know what a puddle jumper is, but I definitely know what arm.
Goes around your waist and it goes like up on your arms and it buckles in the back.
Yeah.
And so when a child is in water, right, they kind of look like a bobber, like a fishing bobber. And so I wish those things would just burn, like every one of those burn. They are the worst because what it's teaching you, Greer, is how to drown. Because if you think about it, you swim horizontal to the pool, right? Whereas if you're in a puddle jumper, it puts you in a vertical position, which is the exact position that you are in to drown. And there's no mobility in that device. Like you can't move your arms. You can't even move forward to even get in the swim position. So there's that. And then the other problem with those floaties, vests, I'm talking everything. None of them are good. It only elongates the process to swim because what you'll find is you have to reverse that muscle memory because your body thinks that vertical is the way to swim. So when you, as a swim coach or a parent or whatever, and you're trying to teach your kid how to swim, you have to reverse that. And it's so hard. It is very hard to reverse that. And then you'll find that a lot of kids have what they call a bicycle kick. So if you can envision a bicycle kick underwater, that'll get you nowhere fast because we kick like a pair of scissors, right? Up and down in that horizontal position. So there's a lot of things that I have to reverse if a kid has been in floaties, a vest, puddle jumper, etc.
What would you suggest instead of those things?
Hold your kid in the pool. Take your kid, hold your kid in the pool, and just start there. Start with the water acclimation, hold your kid in the pool. Get used to it, have toys. The only thing that I use that is somewhat like a floaty is a noodle because you can move your body all over the place with the noodle, but you can put the noodle around their tummy, which they can lay on to give support, but you're allowing them to get in that horizontal position with support to swim.
Yeah. We always had, pool noodles. That's why I call them. I think that's what they're called in England as well.
Oh, okay. And we don't have any rafts in my pool or We don't purchase any rafts because a lot of times you can hide or get hidden underneath a raft and nobody knows that you're under there because you're under the water, so they're not going to hear you. And so that's scary. I mean, they're cute, the big unicorns and dragons and all that, but
Yeah.
I've seen it way too many times, especially like at pool parties or things like that. And when there's a lot more kids than just maybe your 2 or 3 that you have, it becomes dangerous.
Yeah. And that's like you said, when it's one thing if it's 1 or 2 kids, but it's when it's still dangerous then, but it's that the danger increases drastically when
Right.
more kids and more adults, because adults are assuming,
well, so-and-so is watching them. And then if you add drinking into the mix and that sort of thing, that's where, unfortunately, tragedies can occur.
Yeah, I know growing up, my parents, like, whenever we would go to my grandma's pool, there was always the spoon. So whoever was holding the spoon was the one responsible. That way everyone knew who was watching.
And actively watching, not on your phone, not talking to somebody else, actively watching and scanning the pool.
Yeah. And I remember as a kid thinking that's really weird. But now as an adult who has kids, I'm like, no, that was smart. That was, yeah. I'm like constantly going back and forth and looking and stuff. What would you want a parent, a caregiver, of a neurodivergent child about the one thing, it's one thing to take away from this, what's the one thing you want them to take away about kind of water safety?
That you can absolutely do it yourself. I want to empower parents to do it themselves. And I know it's easier to hire somebody, but I also know that they're not cheap, especially if you're trying to find specialized or adaptive swim lessons, and then you add the private lessons on top. I really want to empower parents to just get out there and start. Even if you don't know exactly what you're doing, get out there and start. And if you're a parent and you don't know how to swim, you can take swim lessons with your kid. I mean, I've done that. I can tell you 3 different families that I've had that the parents didn't know how to swim. And I was like, you're both taking them. And they had a blast.
Yeah. And that's that, like, that buddy system, that's that kind of safety. Again, seeing, oh, my mom or dad or, like they're doing it, I can do it. Or they're safe. I'm safe in this as well. So
yeah. And they're willing to try. And so will I, kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And do you have, we'll link your website in the show notes, but is that a place parents could go to maybe get some guidance on how to do that?
Yes. So I have tons of information on my website and on my Instagram at allkidsswim.com. And it's All Kids Swim on Instagram as well. I do a lot of virtual consultations to help parents and guide them along the way. And then I have a webinar coming up on March 6th where I'm going to be teaching the 5 essential skills to teach your own child to prevent a drowning.
And do you do that webinar fairly regularly, or is that just
It's on March 6th, but you can do it whenever you want. And that's on my website too.
That's cool. I like to end the podcast asking the question, what is something you want the world to know about neurodiverse people?
I'm not diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I'm neurodivergent myself. And I just to be honest with you, find them so much more fun. I find myself laughing so much more and having such a good time that I just find it. And that's why I specialize in what I do, is just because it's just so fun. And when they get it, it's the best thing in the world. It is better than anything. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know. We do a lot of celebrating victories in our house, and
absolutely,
it's the best. We recently my son got an award at school, and some parents some people might think we went over the top, but it's like, he worked so hard for that. Of course, we had balloons after school. We got donuts. We were like, we are celebrating because you have worked. He worked 6 weeks for this award. And I was like, of course we're going to celebrate that. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. I go all out. I mean, parents probably think I'm a nutso, but we just scream and yell and cheer, and we do all the things,
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Carrie, for talking about this and sharing so much knowledge and wisdom and ideas.
Sure. Happy to.
Did you know we have a bi-weekly, meaning every other week, newsletter? It has information about the podcast, helpful resources, and a point to ponder on. And just to say, we will be sharing some, secret surprises over the next couple of weeks. So use the link below to sign up and join the Unfinished Community email.